Welcome to Connecting ACO Community, everybody. I'm Derek Bermel, Artistic Director of the American Composers Orchestra. And Connecting ACO Community is made possible by a lead gift from Augusta Gross and Leslie Samuels. And thanks also to Silas Brown, our original tech guru. Thanks to Christina Jensen, PR. Thanks to Lindsay Working, Aiden Feldkamp, Jade Jiang, Stephanie Polonio, Jay House, and of course, our president, Ed Yim. Those folks I mentioned are all ACO staff who have been so helpful to us in this project. And today's edition features Seth Parker Woods, the fantastic cellist and fantastic composer to go with him, Lembit Beecher. Hi to Seth and Lembit. Their collaboration is coming to you with a solo cello piece of Lembit's, which is called his suite for solo cello. And we're going to hear the first movement today of that solo suite called Evaporate. That's the premiere that you're going to hear today with these two great artists. I want to tell our audience that if you want to talk or communicate somehow with the artists, you can use the chat button at the bottom of your screen to talk with them during the premiere and to talk to each other during the premiere. I should say they're not really going to be talking during the premiere, but they will be able to respond to your questions and get back to you. You can also use the Q&A button. Let's see. No, we don't have Q&A. We're just doing chat here. So you can use the chat function here. I'm sorry. For the best reception, please wear headphones. That's what we advise here on StreamYard. You'll get the best sound. If you don't happen to have headphones, that's okay. But if you happen to have a pair handy, strap on those headphones and you'll get slightly better sound here. So let me welcome Lembit Beecher here. Lembit, are you there?
Hi, Derek. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. Great to see you. Where are you now, Lembit?
I'm in Washington Heights in New York City.
Okay, one borough over.
Yes.
I'm coming to you from Brooklyn. Actually, we had some musicians just outside here playing on the street. It was nice to hear some folks kind of firing up their instruments.
There's a jazz trio that's been playing on Riverside Park most Sundays lately. That's been just, I didn't realize how much I missed live music. And it's been such a joy to hear them running by or spending a little time listening.
Yes. Well, slightly different from what we have here today, but nonetheless, you've written for Seth Parker Woods. Is there anything in particular that you wanted to talk about? Maybe your collaboration with Seth, or?
Sure. I think maybe I'll wait until after everyone hears the piece to say anything specific about the genesis or the inspiration of the piece itself. But in terms of the collaboration, it's felt really very special. Seth and I hadn't worked together, and I actually hadn't done a whole lot of Zoom rehearsals, so I was sort of curious to see how everything would go. And it's been such a, I don't know, maybe the best word is sort of a surprisingly intimate way of working on music together. The piece is one that, as you'll hear, has a lot of different types of sounds. It's different bowed sounds and pluck sounds, and a lot of the piece is about how these sounds move into each other, how gestures turn into phrases, into the structure of the whole piece. And the performer has a lot of control in shaping how the piece works. And of course, Seth and I had lots of questions for each other as we began working, but I think really my favorite thing was just to listen to him play large chunks of music. He could just put me on his stand, basically, on his phone or iPad, and he'd play, sometimes 2 or 3 times a large chunk of music, and to be able to hear really up close all the decisions he was making, to hear him sort of experiment each time through and, pushing one thing in one direction, changing the timing of things, playing with intonation for an expressive effect, sort of to have a sense of how his mind was working, interacting with the music, felt so special. And sometimes, you know, I'd hear something I loved or didn't like, and sometimes they would sort of just challenge my own sense of the piece and lead to great conversations. You know, this technology is not new, but still there's just this amazing magic in being able to hear someone's artistry and sort of detailed shaping and care in such a close-up way, even though you're 1,000 miles apart.
Well, it's always a special moment when the music finally comes off the page and you really hear it live, and with all the nuance, and with a great artist like Seth, extra special, I'm sure. So
Definitely.
So thanks for being part of this project, and let's now hear the world premiere of Evaporate, the first movement of your suite for solo cello, and then we'll have a chance to talk a little bit about it and talk about your collaboration and speak with the cellist himself.
Thanks so much, Derek.
Terrific. So, and we're going to hear the world premiere of Evaporate, the first movement of Lembit Beecher's suite for solo cello, performed by Seth Parker Woods.
Thank you so much, Seth.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
my pleasure.
Seth, I know it sounds like the sound of two hands clapping, but I can assure you there were many others
Thousands.
clapping at home.
Thousands.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Seth, can you uh, thank you so much for that performance. Can you what about Lembit's music made you want to commission him?
I think I have to thank the amazing cellist Karen Uzunian. I actually knew her sister Gasia when I was living in the UK for many years, and that connection came via composer George Lewis. And I kept hearing all about Karen, how amazing she was, and I heard her recordings, and then I heard the Azuri Quartet, and then I heard from their very first album, Blueprinting, in which Limit's amazing quartet appears on. And I was so fascinated just by the imagination, the intricacy. It was almost like, this may sound awful, but it almost felt like a fairy tale in this way. He was able to weave so many colors and techniques together that just, it all felt like it was meant to go that way. And I've just been following Karen promoting Lembit's music and listening to more of Lembit's work. And so when you all approached me and I saw his name on there, I was like, oh, this is my chance. So I was like, I hope he says yes. Yeah. So that's the short of it. Yeah.
Can you scooch a little bit closer to the?
Yeah.
I mean,
sorry.
we want to see you and hear you even a little bit better.
Okay.
But I just wanted everyone to know we've got people. You have an audience, of course, in Manhattan and here in Brooklyn, but you also have people who are tuning in from Portland, Oregon, from LA. I saw Tony there in Philly, I think, and Tom in Seattle. I'm just guessing, but then I saw somebody from Stockholm. So you've got a nice, at least bi-continental audience here. And Seth, how's it been for you making work during this period? It's so interesting because we're so tuned in from all over the world, but yet we're all apart.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just like many other creatives, I think had this immediate spur, kind of, well, maybe not immediate. I think after we started to see all the cancellations and reschedulings, or not even reschedulings yet, just the complete dissipation of our careers in our industry, for the moment. I took some time to kind of just gather and figure out what was going on, and also just realize, so much of this I had no control over. And then slowly started getting back into there were still some things I was still working on that hadn't been canceled, and that included the new work for Cello Orchestra by Taishan Sori. So I was still like working on that and working with him in sessions and not knowing what would happen. So I still was like secretly, quietly, like still behind the scenes, trying to keep busy, trying to continue practicing as if the concerts were coming, and then eventually realizing they were all just like going. So I stopped for a while, and I just started doing the things that I didn't really have the time to do for quite a few years, which meant a lot of reading, a lot of cooking, a lot of just reflection and kind of being in nature. So I spent a lot of this time lately focusing on that, but also focusing on things that I know that are to come for the future, or some projects that have kind of come out of this time of solitude. And it's been quite interesting, and some technical difficulties, some frustrations with certain things, and feeling like, when you're doing these multi-instrument works, it's like a building blocks essentially from one person to the next, and it's like you don't really get that interaction. It's just like follow the leader more so, and try to just fit it in for the sake of just production for timelines. But it's been quite exciting. But with this specific collaboration, it's a renewed hope for me, I think, and for the future, I think, in many ways. And it's not the most ideal, and there have been times where I just like, instead of calling Lembit directly, I've just like made some little videos and sent it to him. Hopefully, like it sounds okay, because you just never know what it's gonna sound like on the phone, or what it's like sounding coming from the other person. But I've tried to do my best to kind of keep going, but also realizing that I don't always have to fill every day and every hour with direct cello practice or creativity in that way, but also give myself space, just like many of us in the industry really did need the time to kind of step away and figure out exactly what is it that we're doing, and more specifically, why is that we're still doing it, and what is still driving us, and probably find a renewed hope for that, so that we come out of this, we continue to brew and come out of this with something even more dynamic and powerful.
Yeah, well, you got to
think that. Sorry.
No. It's beautiful. You know, we're all kind of just dealing with this in our own way, and it makes everybody feel particularly vulnerable. And also, you know, these little things give us great hope for the future. It's so moving to have a piece written for you, really specially for you, for your sound, for your mind. You know, and I was wondering, Lembit, this particular piece, I noticed this is only the first movement of 4, and they kind of build on each other. You obviously had some time on your hands.
I got a little carried away. It's such a funny time to be writing music, to be thinking about what it means to be an artist. The moment feels too big in many ways to respond to directly in music. But I think something about this collaboration, the fact that it was one person, it's someone who's playing I'd seen before and admired a great deal, and that there was this one-on-one back and forth. It felt really inspiring, and as I often do, I write. If I have a project, instead of writing one piece, I'll start writing 2 or 3, because I don't want to have to try to cram all my ideas into one piece. I know if I write one, I'll just try to throw everything into one piece, and that usually doesn't create good music. So I think I had maybe 4 or 5 threads I was following, and I thought I would choose one out of them. But in this case, there were 3 that really emerged. And so they all became movements of this one suite. And it started getting longer and longer and longer. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think there's more work I need to do on it, but for it to be sort of an ongoing work in progress, an ongoing collaboration.
You know, when I was listening to it, I almost felt like it was a shy person speaking who was just revealing a bit more of themselves in each iteration of the phrases. It's very beautiful, hypnotizing music. Seth, I was curious, what was the most challenging aspect of learning this piece, just either technically or psychologically?
It's a 2-part. I think the first part of it, it's so controlled. You know, it's so much of it is so controlled, and having never really worked with Lembit, but having listened to quite a lot of his string writing, it kind of gave me a clue in. But you know, of course, when you're sitting right there with them, you know, they're hearing everything, but you get the chance to really work with them. But I think it was just trying to control all the dynamics, like almost like peeling back the layers of things. Because of course you could play this, or there's different ways in things I could do in over the course of the work, or over the course of the first 2 measures, and how can I give a little bit but not too much, and almost like I am shielding myself at the same time, because there's things, you know, that we talked about, things that I played that became very much so in the body for me. And he was like, "Oh no, it's too gestural." And I'm like, "Oh no!" And I was like, "Because that's me, you know." And when I feel this type of gesture, this type of writing, or this type of kind of choreographic line, I've embodied it in a certain way. So I have to kind of like redo that thing, you know, to figure out how to get exactly what he wants to kind of come out, and then I can kind of like fold back into the wave. Yeah. So I think that was probably the hardest thing, trying to get those things to kind of come out in a way that they still felt delicate, but also frantic at the same time. Yeah.
Well, I noticed Lembit. I noticed your indication in the score, which said hurried, extemporaneous, gently herky-jerky, but always with a sense of line, an elegant, almost baroque, sotto voce, dance-like stream floating into nothingness.
That's a sign of someone who hasn't edited himself enough.
It's so poetic. It's so poetic, and actually some of the people who wrote in said it's very poetic.
That's Limbit.
Good to hear.
They said,
It is, I think so.
Tom May wrote such poetry, and there it is. The poetry was there. It was there in the description. Do you often do that? Do you write? Is that because I noticed that there are a lot of words that you use, and also I was curious, Seth, how you relate to those words.
I think to my end, I do. In general, I feel. Why write one word when you could write two or three? I mean, I think there's sort of an understanding, and I don't know if you feel this way, Seth, but there's an understanding that at some point the music, hope, will speak for itself. At some point, it's in Seth's hands to shape and to do what he feels is right musically. But the more information you can give initially to sort of give him options or to give him different things to respond to. And I think different performers will respond to different sorts of language. You know, some performers, I think, love very technical language. 30% Ponticello was, something like that. And other performers will respond to like wispy smoke, like, word like that. So I think I try to put as much description as possible to put every little bit of what I'm thinking on the page. In words, if not in music, and then knowing that the performer may respond to one part of that more than the other, and make that their own, and that's exciting to hear.
Oh, should I respond?
And Seth, you perform so much new music. I mean, you have such a wide repertoire. How do you prefer to see pochissimo sul Ponticello to poco sul Ponticello, or is it just depends on the composer?
I don't think it depends on the composer. I think it just depends on the language in which is kind of being dictated through the score. So many times I feel like with this work, especially this movement specifically, has a lot of a mixture of those things. But I'm always trying to figure out where the languages sit in the body, and that has been my research. Practice-based research forever, really, and so it's really me looking for the choreographies in the work through the line writing and trying to find those colors that can try to find a way to come out and find 2 or 3 or 4 different ways of approaching it, whether it's gesturally or it's time-based or it's intentionality, or looking at forms of the identities that kind of keep coming back, that D to B flat, or that continuously comes back in different iterations. So it's just trying to figure out kind of what are the hierarchies there for Limbit, but also for me, and how do I relate to those things in a way that can kind of, at the end of the day, I'm always looking for the narrative, like what story am I trying to tell here, and through them, what is Limbit's story, and then on top of that, juxtapose on top of it, where am I fitting inside of all of this, and how can I take the listener on that journey with me? Yeah. That's all.
Story, about language, and it's interesting because we're making analogies to words and to language. When you actually explained about your playing at the beginning, you were talking about the difference in playing a phrase with a particular kind of stress, and those are all kind of things that relate very much to language. Lembit, do you think a lot about language, because you use poetic language to describe things?
I mean, I think language. I think about language as a tool for communication. I think the thing that's important for me is creating, and this is something Seth was alluding to, creating a sense of a world. And there is maybe an element of, I don't know if you call it a fantastical world or fantasy or some sort of environment, and getting that right feels very important to me. And that's often can be expressed through the harmony and the choices I make, but also through the choices the performer makes, the articulations, the types of stress that things get. So I think communicating that sense of a world is really important. Creating a sense of the physicality of the world, or to the rules that the world live by, is really important. But maybe not language in a sense of rhetoric or phrasing. I think the physicality that maybe is important to my music, to why things fall the certain ways that they do, rather than a sense of rhetoric or sort of linguistic analogy.
If people have questions, by the way, feel free to pose them to these wise souls. In the comments section, I see a bunch of composers kind of chiming in to say hello. And so it's nice you both have your composer fan club. Seth, I know that you're working on lots of projects. I know you had this big concerto from Taishan Sori. When is that gonna happen? What's next for you? I'm sure you've got a million things up on the docket ready to go, and you must be chomping at the bit.
Yeah, always. I feel like that's my MO, sadly. No, we are now, as it stands right now, slated for November. We will come back to Seattle with Thomas Daska and the orchestra to give the premiere then. And then in December, it will go to the Atlanta Symphony. So looking forward to that. On top of that work, I am busy preparing things for my latest show, Difficult Grace, which features work by Ryan Carter, Nathalie Joachim, Frederick Gifford, Frida Upton, Monty Atkins, Pierre-Alexandre Tremblay, and the lovely Du Yun. And it's an older work of Du Yun's that I don't think people play much more, but I'm really excited about it. So I'll be touring that work this coming season whenever we're back at the halls or concert spaces. So I'm working on that, and I'm busy working also on Fausto Romatelli's Cello Concerto from 1993. So I was slated to give the US premiere this past May at the Spoleto Festival, but here we are. I will then, next season, I will give it just the next iteration of the festival. I will return go to Spoleto officially for the first time to give the US premiere. So it's going to be a very busy year, yet again, with lots of projects. Yeah.
Very diverse.
Yes.
I mean, a list of composers and projects there. So, wow. Lembit, what about you? What do you have coming up? Or we know that you've now written this epic cello work that at some point Seth will unveil to the world, perhaps in stages as he started to do.
I'll keep adding movements every month. I'll send them.
Excellent. He's giving you the X.
No, I think it might be done. The funny thing is, actually, my next big project is Cello Concerto, written for Karen Ozunian, who Seth had mentioned, who's also my wife. So that's actually, I started writing that in January, and then different things happened, and so I need to pick that up again, and that'll be the next big project for me.
Wow. Well, so she'll have the benefit of hearing. Hopefully, I expect she's listening today. I hope so.
Yes.
So, the bar is raised for her. Yes. But terrific, terrific cellist.
More than good.
And that's right. You had the inside. You had the inside track with a cellist with whom you could try these things out too. So no wonder the cello is so near and dear to your heart. Well, thank you both so much. I don't know if there are any last minute questions. People were asking about how long is the total piece.
I think it's about 13 minutes. So
Okay.
It's 4 movements. So 2 of the movements are almost duplicates of each other, almost.
All right. So something to go with a Bach cello suites, perhaps one day on a recital.
Many things, yes.
Who knows? Well, thank you both so much. This has been such a pleasure to hear the premiere of your new beautiful work, and we look forward to hearing the rest of it at some point. But Seth, thank you so much for being here with us today. And again, Lembit, thanks for the beautiful music. And I'll say a couple of little words, but for now, stay safe, both of you, and please keep bringing us the music because we need it.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Seth.
ACO, thank you all.
And for our community out there still listening, just want to let you know that next week we're going to have composer Alejandro Basulta Martinez and oboist Alicia Lawyer from Houston, both. Alicia happens to also be the artistic director of ROCO, the River Oaks Chamber Orchestra. So that'll be at this time next week, and please tune into that. And ACO continues to do our work as usual, tirelessly. And one of the really exciting things I have to say about what ACO has been doing is in our education programs are absolutely full this summer. And that's the Sonic Spark Lab and the Compose Yourself program. So we're serving middle school students, high school students, and college students all during the summer online with creative projects. And so please go to the website if you want more information about that. And for all the other things that we do here at ACO, please go to the website. And if you want to support the project, it's right up there on the banner in front of my face. Please go, and you can see it in the comments section, copy it there, or you can go to the website if you want to support this project or other projects that we do. So thank you so much for keeping art alive during this time. Composers, performers, and thanks from ACO to all our listeners. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week here on Connecting ACO Community.